Have you ever loved someone so deeply that your heart ached with every glance, yet you never found the courage to speak those 3 words? Stay with me until the end of this story, because what happens next will remind you why silence can be both our greatest protector and our deepest regret. And if this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate the courage it takes to love. Maya had always been the kind of person who lived in the shadows of her own life, not because she wanted to, but because somewhere along the way she had convinced herself that she was safer there. Her love for Daniel existed in that same shadow, growing quietly like a garden no one else could see. They had met 5 years ago at a small bookstore in Portland, a kind with creaky wooden floors and the smell of old paper that clung to your clothes long after you left. Maya was reaching for a copy of poetry by Rumi when Daniel's hand touched the same book. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted in the universe. At least that's how it felt to Maya. Daniel smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Great choice," he said, pulling his hand back. "You take it. I've read it a dozen times anyway." His voice was gentle, the kind that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. "Are you sure?" Maya had asked, her cheeks flushing pink. "Absolutely. Maybe we can discuss it sometime over coffee." That coffee turned into a friendship that became the cornerstone of Maya's existence. They met every Thursday at the same cafe, sharing stories about their weeks, their dreams, their fears. Daniel talked about his work as a middle school teacher, how he wanted to make a difference in kids' lives. Maya shared her struggles as a freelance graphic designer, the uncertainty that came with chasing a creative dream. But Maya never shared the one truth that mattered most. She never told him that every Thursday she spent hours choosing what to wear, that she practiced conversations in her head during the drive to the cafe, that when he laughed at her jokes, her entire world lit up like the 4th of July, that she was hopelessly, desperately, completely in love with him. The reasons for her silence were complex, woven from threads of fear and self-doubt. Maya had watched her parents' marriage crumble when she was 12, seen how her mother's vulnerability had been weaponized, turned into something ugly. She had learned early that speaking your heart could lead to devastation. Better to love quietly, she told herself. Better to have him as a friend than risk losing him entirely. Then there was the matter of Sarah. Daniel had mentioned her casually about 2 years into their friendship. "I've been seeing someone," he had said over cappuccinos one rainy Thursday. Maya's heart had dropped into her stomach, but she smiled and said all the right things. "That's wonderful, Daniel. Tell me about her." Sarah was everything Maya feared she wasn't. Confident, outgoing, the kind of woman who walked into a room and commanded attention. She was a lawyer, sharp and successful. Daniel's face glowed when he talked about her, and Maya learned to swallow the glass shards that seemed to lodge in her throat every time Sarah's name came up. The friendship continued, but it changed. Daniel brought Sarah to some of their gatherings. Maya watched them together. The way Sarah's hand would rest possessively on Daniel's arm, the way she would interrupt their conversations with inside jokes Maya couldn't understand. Each interaction was a small death. But Maya endured. She had become an expert at enduring. Years passed like this. Maya dated other people, trying desperately to move on. There was Marcus, the accountant who was kind but boring. Then Jake, the musician who was exciting but unreliable. None of them were Daniel. None of them made her feel like the world made sense just by existing in the same space. Her best friend Sophie knew the truth. "You have to tell him," Sophie would say during their weekly brunches. "This is eating you alive, Maya. You deserve to be happy. He has Sarah, he's happy. What kind of friend would I be if I disrupted that?" Maya would respond, the same script they'd acted out 100 times. "What kind of friend is he being by keeping you in this limbo?" Sophie would counter, but Maya never had an answer for that. Everything changed on a Tuesday in October. Maya was working from her apartment, lost in designing a logo for a new client, when her phone rang. It was Daniel, but something in his voice was different, broken. "Can I come over?" he asked. "I really need to talk to someone." 20 minutes later, Daniel sat on her couch, his shoulders slumped in a way she'd never seen before. Sarah had ended things. She had been cheating on him for 6 months with a colleague. Daniel had found out by accident, seen messages on her phone that left no room for interpretation or forgiveness. Maya's heart broke for him, even as a terrible, guilty hope flickered to life in her chest. She held him while he cried, stroking his hair like she'd imagined doing 1,000 times, but never like this. Never born from his pain. I'm such an idiot, Daniel said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. I thought we had something real. I thought she loved me. You're not an idiot, Maya said softly. You loved with your whole heart. That's never idiotic. That's brave. Brave, Daniel laughed bitterly. I don't feel brave. I feel like a fool. In the weeks that followed, Daniel became a regular fixture at Maya's apartment. They fell into a new rhythm, one that felt both achingly familiar and dangerously different. Movie nights stretched until dawn. Dinners became elaborate cooking experiments. The boundary between friendship and something more began to blur in ways that made Maya's heart race and her mind scream warnings. One evening, as they sat on her balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Daniel turned to her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Can I ask you something? He said. Anything, Maya replied, her heart hammering. Why have you never settled down with anyone? In all the years I've known you, you've dated, but nothing ever sticks. Why? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and danger. This was her moment. The universe was offering her a door, and all she had to do was walk through it. But fear, that old familiar companion, wrapped its fingers around her throat. I guess I just haven't found the right person, she said, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. Daniel nodded slowly, and was it her imagination, or did disappointment flash across his face? Yeah, he said, I get that. The moment passed, and Maya hated herself for her cowardice. But fate, it seemed, wasn't done with him yet. 2 months later, Daniel got a job offer in Seattle. A dream position at a progressive school with innovative programs. He was excited, energized in a way Maya hadn't seen since before Sarah. He was moving in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Maya had 3 weeks left with the person she loved more than anyone else in the world, and then geography would put distance between them that their friendship might not survive. The realization hit her like a freight train. She had been so focused on not losing him by confessing her feelings that she had failed to see she was losing him anyway. Silence hadn't protected her. It had just postponed the inevitable pain. Sophie's words echoed in her mind during another brunch 1 week before Daniel's move. You're running out of time, Maya. If you don't tell him now, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what if. Is that really better than knowing? That night, Maya sat at her kitchen table and wrote everything she had never said. Every feeling, every moment, every reason she had loved him in silence. The words poured out of her like a confession, like a prayer, like a goodbye. When she finished, she had 5 pages of truth that terrified her. The next morning, she tore them up. Then she wrote them again. This cycle repeated for 6 days. On Daniel's last Thursday in Portland, they met at their cafe one final time. Maya brought the letter, folded in her pocket, a ticking time bomb against her thigh. They ordered their usual drinks, cappuccino for her, black coffee for him. They talked about Seattle, about his new apartment, about staying in touch. You'll visit, right? Daniel asked, his eyes searching hers. Of course, Maya said, but they both knew how these promises went. Life got busy, distances grew, friendships faded. As they stood to leave, Daniel pulled her into a hug. A real one, the kind that lasted longer than friendship required. Maya breathed in his scent, memorizing it, knowing this might be the last time she felt his arms around her. I'm going to miss you, he whispered against her hair. More than you know. The letter in her pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. This was it. Now or never. Speak or stay silent forever. Maya pulled back, looked into his eyes, those warm brown eyes that had been her home for 5 years, and opened her mouth. Daniel, she began, her voice shaking. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. His expression shifted, something hopeful and afraid flickering across his features. What is it? I love you, Maya said. The words tumbling out, rushed and clumsy and so deeply true. I've loved you since the day we met in that bookstore. I've loved you through every Thursday, through Sarah, through everything. I never said anything because I was scared of losing you, but I'm losing you anyway, and I can't let you leave without knowing that you have been loved completely. Honestly, even if you never felt the same way, even if this changes nothing, I needed you to know. The silence that followed felt eternal. Daniel stared at her, his face cycling through surprise, confusion, and then something that looked heartbreakingly like regret. Maya, he said slowly, carefully, why didn't you ever say anything? Because you had Sarah. Because I was afraid. Because I'm an idiot, Maya said, tears now streaming down her face. Sarah and I broke up 8 months ago, Daniel said quietly, and for the past 2 months I've been trying to figure out how to tell you that all those movie nights and dinners weren't just friendship for me anymore. That somewhere along the way, I fell in love with my best friend. And I didn't know if you could ever feel the same way. Maya felt like the world had tilted on its axis. What? Daniel reached out, cupping her face in his hands, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. When you said you hadn't found the right person that night on your balcony, I thought that was your way of telling me you'd never see me as more than a friend. So I took the job in Seattle to give myself space to get over you. You're moving to Seattle to get over me? Maya asked, laughing through her tears at the beautiful absurdity of it all. I was, Daniel said, smiling now too. But I'm thinking, maybe I don't want to get over you. Maybe I want to drive back here every weekend. Maybe I want to figure out how we make this work, because the thought of not having you in my life, not really having you, is worse than any distance. He kissed her then, right there in the parking lot of their cafe. It felt like every romance novel and love song finally making sense. It felt like coming home. They didn't have all the answers. Long distance would be hard. There would be challenges ahead, practical realities to navigate. But as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Maya realized something profound. Her silence had been born from fear of pain, but real pain came from never taking the risk. Love required courage, the kind of courage that meant stepping out of shadows and into the terrifying, beautiful light of vulnerability. Sometimes the happy ending isn't about perfect timing or ideal circumstances. Sometimes it's about finding the bravery to speak your truth, even when your voice shakes. Sometimes it's about loving someone enough to risk losing them, because keeping them in halfway measures isn't really keeping them at all. Maya had loved Daniel in silence for 5 years, protecting her heart but starving her soul. And then everything changed, not because the universe suddenly aligned in her favor, but because she chose courage over comfort, truth over safety, love over fear. 3 months later, Maya moved to Seattle, not for Daniel, but for herself, for a fresh start in a city that represented possibility. Daniel helped her unpack boxes in her new apartment across town from his, and they laughed about all the time they had wasted, all the years they could have been doing this together. But Maya didn't regret those years anymore. They had shaped her, taught her, prepared her for this moment. Sometimes we need to love in silence before we can learn to love out loud. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that it's never too late to speak your truth, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more. And remember, the greatest regrets in life aren't the risks we take, but the ones we don't. Don't let your love story remain unspoken. The world needs more courage, more truth, and more people willing to step into the light.